Welcome back. Well, today there's new evidence exposing an alien, multiple types and exophenotypes, an alien role in world affairs from Atlantis to World War II and the present day. And we have a distinguished author and UFO researcher, Mr. Len Kasten, who's a former member of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena and the Mutual UFO Network, and also has published many articles, multiple articles. I mean, he puts any author to shame. Over 50 articles in Atlantis Rising and New Dawn and New Dawn magazines. I've only published a paltry 1 or 2 articles there, Len. So I feel I'm in the,
Well, this was over mine were written over a long period of time.
Right. And is the author of The Secret History of Extraterrestrials and The Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. And so perhaps, Len, in the future, you'll grace us with your presence and you can talk about your other works, especially The Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, which would be a great pleasure.
Absolutely.
But here you're here to talk about your newly released book, Alien World Order, which I'm glad to say we're both published by the same publishing house, Bear and Company, of Inner Traditions, and this has really come right smack into the present day because it's sort of a documentation from the big picture down to the nanoparticle of the transhumanist agenda of the reptilian and certain gray role in our galaxy and now in our planet and their plan in the grand order of things. So having given that introduction, I wonder if you could give, first of all, kind of the big picture, the Star Wars type origin of the great Lyra conflict of the origin of humans versus reptilians. I guess it's beyond our galaxy in this quadrant of the universe. Orion figures in there. Over to you.
Well, Lyra is in our galaxy.
Oh, sorry.
And Lyra is in our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. However, the Andromeda galaxy is involved in the story in a very big way. This story of our confrontation, or the human confrontation with the reptilians, began in the Lyra star system, according to many different authors, particularly Alan Collier, who goes into it in great detail. Branton, actually his name is Bruce Allen D. Walton, is also Stuart Sverdlow, and several others. Everyone seems to agree, including Barbara Marciniak, I believe, that the first human-reptilian confrontation occurred in the Lyran star system. How long ago? I'm not sure. A very long time ago. And the reptilians who were legendary travelers, space travelers, and had roamed the galaxy with their technology, with their superior technology, happened upon the Lyran system, where they encountered the humans. And the humans had been living there peacefully for thousands of years, according to Alex Collier. They traded, the human planets traded with each other. They had agricultural setups, and they were very peaceful. They had a very rudimentary defense system. They never really expected an all-out invasion and attack on their planets. So they weren't ready for the reptilians. The reptilians had tremendous technology, tremendous weaponry, and at first they thought they could get along with the humans, and they tried to, but then they realized that they could be very helpful to them, and so they just decided to invade the Lyran system and add the Lyran system to their long string of other conquests throughout the galaxy. According to Branton, at least up to the current time, they had about 21 star systems that they had already attacked and enslaved most of the occupants. So they were prepared to do the same thing with Lyra, and they destroyed 3 of the planets in the Lyran star systems, and they slaughtered about 50 million humans, and in that attack. And so that was the beginning of our whole confrontation with the reptilians, between the humans and the reptilians. As a result of that attack, the humans scattered throughout the galaxy. Those who had spacefaring technology were able to go to different star systems, and eventually they developed technology to repel the reptilian invasions. And according to Collier, they scattered to about 110 different star systems. And together they joined in to form what we now call the Galactic Federation. Some call it the Galactic Federation of Light. It's referred to variously as the Federation or the Collective. And they stayed in touch with each other, and it became a very hierarchical structure. Actually, I shouldn't say hierarchical. It was really a democratic structure because they all basically relied on each other. And there were some very, very advanced members of this federation, human members. They were all humans. Probably the most advanced human species or human variation were the Elohim, who came from different star systems. In any case, as a result of that federation forming, they were prepared to repel reptilian invasions throughout the galaxy. And they communicated with each other, and they helped each other develop advanced technology, which became very advanced. Eventually, they developed electromagnetic pulse weapons. They developed wormhole travel, all of it. They were now pretty much on a par with the reptilians in terms of technology. So that's how it all began. And that's pretty much the story that's told by Alex Collier, Stuart Swerdlow, Branton, Penry, and several others,
Who is
including
yeah? You also
Wes Penry.
have a another person, Robert Morningsky, as a major source. Could you say just a bit about him?
Yeah, I wasn't able to really get the whole story in my head straight until I came upon the works of Robert Morningsky. He was the key. He was the key for me that opened up all this information and allowed me to put it all together as it is and connect these dots anyway. Morningsky was a very strange individual. He's a Indian Apache Indian chief, actually, but he also has a master's degree in religious studies, and he's a very bright guy. And he tried to get this whole story put together for his thesis, and they laughed at him for his degree in religious studies. So that really bothered him. How he came to this information was that his grandfather lived on a reservation in the U.S., and an alien craft crashed in that reservation a long time ago. All I know about it is that it was before Roswell. And Morningsky's ancestor was a young man then. He was one of 6 young men that came upon the crash site and found one of the aliens alive. And they took him and brought him back to health. He was somewhat damaged, or I don't know whether he was really hurt or not, but he was wounded in any case. And as a result of that contact, this alien, who they came to know by the name of Bekti, Bekti, told them the entire history of the galactic confrontations with the reptilians. And that story was passed down from Morning Sky's grandfather to his father, who passed it on faithfully to him, and that's how he got the information. That's how he got the information about the reptilians and the whole story. And then he put that into his book, which I used for my reference. And without that ancient history of what happened on Lyra and all of that, none of this would really make sense, because David Icke attacked it from the contemporary standpoint, and Icke's information was invaluable to me because his research was impeccable, I felt, and he knew what he was doing, and he did it very well, and he has known that. But I needed that piece of the ancient history to put it all together, and Morning Sky provided that, and that's what made my book possible.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And so please continue with the unfoldment of kind of the Star Wars and the role of Orion and the Orion Wars.
Well, according to Morning Sky's narrative, the reptilians developed on a planet. They evolved on a planet he called the Green Planet many years ago, and they evolved really into what we might call a humanoid reptilian race that really that had the human conformation of 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, and so forth. But they continued to have the scaly green skin of their reptilian ancestors. And they eventually developed into a very sophisticated society on their home planet. But they were very, very, how should I put it? They were very, very brutal in their tactics. When they had problems with others, they just killed them. It was sort of like the mafia in a lot of ways. But they developed spacefaring technology eventually, and they started traveling to their moons, and then from their moons they started branching out into the galaxy. And they developed incredible weaponry. What they would do is they would actually use asteroids as attack vehicles. They would hollow out asteroids. And since most planetary systems don't pay much attention to asteroids, the asteroids would float into their solar system, and they would think they were really, they would not ever think of them as weapons. And then when the time was right, they would attack from the asteroids using incredible pulse weapons and lasers technology. And that's how they conquered so many star systems. According to Branton, he claims that they had now enslaved 21 star systems in this galaxy. So when in their travels throughout the galaxy, which they did regularly, they traveled all over the place, they came upon our solar system. Now, what happened was a lot of the refugees from Lyra had settled here already in this solar system. And they populated 2 planets. They populated Mars, and they populated a planet between Mars and Jupiter that we now know as Maldek, which was a very large planet. And they were living peacefully here. The planet Earth, as we know it, did not exist at that time. It was really a water planet. It was not habitable because of the fact that water covered the entire planet. And there are many other planets like that in our galaxy that are completely water closed in. So when the reptilians got here and saw that there were humans living here, they immediately decided to attack, and they they destroyed the planet Maldek. Some think that it was destroyed by the fact that they came too close to it in passing by, and that caused it to explode. But more likely, they used the same technology they used in Lyra. They literally could destroy a planet with their weaponry, and that's probably what they did. And so the Maldekians were slaughtered. Many of them had already seen the threat coming, and they had gone to Mars, and so they were living on Mars. And then as the reptilian planet passed by Mars, it stripped much of the atmosphere off of Mars, so that all the inhabitants of Mars were forced to go underground. Then it came to Earth, and when it came to the vicinity of Earth, it started a mutual orbit around Earth, and they have the ability to dry out our planet, Earth. And when they did that, Atlantis. And they decided to settle on Lemuria, and they created a civilization on Lemuria. Way back. I don't know the years that we're talking about here, but it's a long time ago. And they lived peacefully there in this solar system for thousands of years. But in doing what they did, they pushed Earth out into a different orbit, and they became the orbit between Mercury and Earth, which at that time Stuart Sverdlov calls it an ice comet. It was really an ice planet that eventually became what we know as the planet Venus. And they continued to dwell on Venus and also on Lemuria on this planet. And so that was the situation for a long time. According to Sverdlov, that situation lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. They owned this planet all by themselves. That was the beginning of the history of what eventually became the confrontation with the humans on this planet. So it's important to have that background before we go any further.
Right. Now, how do the Greys fit into the Reptilians?
According to what I've learned about the Greys, they are a hybrid race created by the Reptilians, and they more or less carry out all the instructions of the Reptilians. The Reptilians are far superior in terms of technology and in terms of biological and genetic information. So they created the Greys. Now, I covered that more or less in my book about how the Greys eventually took over on this planet.
Right.
That's another story, which you already have a lot of that information anyway, I think.
Yeah. Now, so that when the Reptilians arrived here in Lemuria, were they in the fourth dimension or in the third? Could you sort of describe all of that?
Well, David Icke says that they are basically fourth dimensional creatures, and they don't really care to dwell in the third dimension if they can avoid it because it takes too much energy. Now, here, what we call the fourth dimension is really the lower astral. And that's the reason that the reptilians can appear and disappear from dimension to dimension. When they started the abduction process here through the Greys, they were really inhabiting the fourth dimension mainly, and doing a lot of what they did in what James Bartley calls the dreamscape. While people were fast asleep, they could operate in the dreamscape from the fourth dimension. So, but they, on the other hand, when they were in the third dimension, they are fearsome-looking creatures. They're huge. They're up to, I think, 12 to 14 feet tall. And probably the most important thing we need to know about them at that point is that when they first came here, according to Sverdlov, they brought the dinosaurs with them because they came inside a planet. their planet they came here in was their spaceship, so they could bring a lot of creatures with them. And the reason they brought the dinosaurs with them was because the dinosaurs was their primary food source. They ate the dinosaurs, and they farmed them and grew them and whatever they needed to do. And so that was the situation until the Federation decided that they were not going to allow it to exist, that they were not going to allow the reptilians to have this solar system. And apparently there was a conference among all the Federation civilizations, and they decided they were going to confront the reptilians here. They were upset, naturally, that they had destroyed Maldek, that they had taken the atmosphere off of Mars, and that they had forced human occupants of Mars to go underground. So they decided to send the fiercest human race in the Federation to Earth to confront the reptilians directly. And the civilization they chose was called the Atlans, Atlans, who were dwelling at that time in the Pleiadian system. They were all refugees from Lyra, just like all the rest of the humans were. But they had developed a very advanced civilization in the Pleiades. They were highly technological. They knew a lot about genetic engineering. They were a very advanced species. And the Federation sent them to Earth. And according to Sverdlow, they populated the continent of Atlantis. That's why it's called Atlantis, because it's a derivation of the Atlans. That's how Atlantis began. So all the occupants of Atlantis, the early occupants of Atlantis, were not human, as we understand the term human. They were a different human race. I think Corey Goode and others are now referring to those early humans as pre-Adamic, because they existed before the advent of Adam and Eve. So they were a fierce race. They were a very advanced race. They were a very spiritual race. And they also had capabilities of going in and out of dimensions. So that's how the conflict shaped up here. That's how it all started.
Right. Now, so from there, how did that evolve?
Well, naturally, the warfare broke out almost immediately. The two civilizations were constantly at war with each other. The Atlans were trying to create an agriculturally based system, and they were very, very upset that the dinosaurs kept trampling their crops. But also, they felt the time had come to actually confront them and see if they could destroy the reptilians on this solar system, because they didn't want this to become a reptilian solar system. The Federation wanted to make this into a human solar system, become another Lyra. And the Atlans had electromagnetic pulse weapons, according to Sverdlow, and they used them to pointed them downwards on Lemuria, and eventually Lemuria sank beneath the Pacific Ocean. And when that happened, the reptilians basically went underground all over the globe.
Right. So
and that point,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, when you said went underground, what immediately came up to me was images of, quote, inner Earth.
Yeah, I think Corey Goode is now saying, and I think he's right about this, that what we call inner Earth is really not a hollow Earth. It's really these whatever civilizations live inside Earth are in the crust of the Earth. I'm not sure that there is an inner sun and all of that, but certainly the crust itself is probably hundreds of miles in thickness. So there's a lot going on just in the crust, and that's where they set up their empire.
The
deep caverns and deep caverns with very, very high ceilings, up to miles in length. And they set up a high-speed train system, supersonic train system, which we now call maglev, and they could crisscross the globe in very short periods of time. They were
and
good at that. That's what they were good at. They were very
and
good at that.
and so this is kind of after the sinking of Atlantis.
No, this is before the sinking of Atlantis.
Oh,
This was
before
after the
this.
sinking of Lemuria.
Oh,
At
Lemuria.
that time, that left the Atlans in command of the surface world,
I see.
and that's when the golden age of Atlantis began,
I see.
when the reptilians had retreated underground.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, good.
So now we have these very advanced beings from the the Pleiades, known as the Atlans, created a golden civilization here on Atlantis. And in my book, I brought out a lot of information about Atlantis that is not commonly known, because I used as a reference Steve Omar, because I came to believe that Omar had the right story. And it made sense, and it checked out with a lot of the things that Edgar Cayce used to talk about. That the civilization on Atlantis was now no longer interfered with because all the reptilians were underground. They were essentially out of the way. And Lemuria was under the waves of the Pacific. So what became Atlantis was actually a really golden, highly advanced civilization. They had space travel, they had nuclear weapons, they had electromagnetic weapons, and they also were motivated, because of what happened to Maldek, to attack the lunar base of the reptilians, because the reptilians also had a lunar setup. And at one point, Omar says that the moon was really initially a province of Atlantis, because the Atlanteans succeeded in wiping out a lot of the reptilian bases on the moon and their own civilization on the moon. So that was another story. That's a whole different story. But at that point, the Atlans really owned the surface world.
Right.
And the reptilians stayed underground. And mainly under the Indian subcontinent, between Benares and Tibet, is the primary location of the reptilian underground empire. And supposedly they have a very sophisticated capital city there, somewhere under the Indian subcontinent, that is called Bogavita. And according to Branton, this is a seven layer city that is basically the central city in their empire down under the earth. But they have the ability to go in and out through polar regions and through other portals in and out of the underground, and they can travel to the stars. They have the spacecraft. They have it all. They have all the technology down there. So they're not exactly locked in down there.
Right. So
And
go
yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of going to I'm kind of reading from your from your final paragraph here, which states quote, the aliens and the Illuminati are well along in their final plans to take over the planet. In addition to creating and cloning millions of hybrids, they are seeking to robotize the human population through the transhumanist agenda so that it can be controlled electronically as well as from the fourth dimension. The goal is to eliminate as many humans as possible who are motivated from spiritual sources. this will be done through another war and subsequent massive depopulation. When the human population that remains is vastly outnumbered by the hybrids and the dehumanized robots and slaves, we will become annexed to the alien empire. So it almost sounds like we're about to go through another turn of the wheel here, where the reptilians want to take down the surface human population. Because you were getting up to that point where it looks like Atlantis is going to be taken down, correct?
Well, Atlantis was taken down.
No, right.
Atlantis was taken down.
Yeah. So you were getting up to that point.
They succeeded. Yeah, exactly. What they did with Atlantis is what they do on all their conquests throughout the galaxy. They kidnap or abduct the humans from the surface. They take the DNA, mix it with their own, and you create hybrids.
Yeah.
And they did that on Atlantis. Yes, that's what they do.
And it occurred. I've heard figures up, about 9,500 BC, about 12,500 years ago. I'm sure that you have other figures about when exactly that occurred.
Well, from the moment they became an underground civilization, they began their revenge.
Yeah.
And it didn't take them long. Okay. So around 50,000 BC. Yeah.
Right.
Around 50,000 years ago.
Right.
When Atlantis was at its peak.
Right.
They started doing that, and also since they dwell in the fourth dimension, they knew how to work with black magic, and they had many black magicians, which we consider black magicians. They were really reptilians.
Right.
And so that's how they slowly took over Atlantis.
And so now,
hybridized large.
Yeah, and so the very last paragraph of your book states that that's what they're doing again. They're saying the human population that remains is vastly outnumbered by the hybrids, i.e., reptilian human hybrids, and the dehumanized robots and slaves. We, namely whatever remains of humans, will be annexed to the alien empire. So you're saying that that what happened 12,000 years ago, or starting 50,000 years ago, Atlantis was taken down. We built ourselves back up, but we're going to be taken down again. And that's such an amazing message that I kind of want to cut to the chase first and then go back to Atlantis so that people can really understand how vital it is to learn and understand what happened at the fall of Atlantis, what happened in between, and how this potential fall has been architected.
Exactly. That's the important message here.
Yeah.
It should be understood. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So please take us. We're all kind of sitting at the edge of our seats, and we're back with the Atlans, and the reptilians are underground, and so take it from there.
Well, the Atlans were not very pleased with the fact that there was a convocation on the planet Hatona, the Andromeda system, because the Federation wanted to do something about the situation here on Earth after Atlantis sank. Actually, Atlantis was still above water when they decided to convene this meeting on Hatona. The idea was to decide the Federation wanted to figure out a way to get the reptilians off this planet and out of the solar system completely. So they agreed to a convention on Hatona with the reptilians, and the 12 human races who were most involved with keeping this solar system human. The result of that council was that they would create a brand new race here. They would combine the DNA of the 12 human races involved, and also the DNA of the reptilians would be incorporated into the final product. That was the deal. That was the deal that was made, and that deal was made sometime while Atlantis was still a continent, and the Atlans were not very happy with that deal, and they decided that they were not going to cooperate with it anyway. In any case, the other 12 human civilizations, which included the Elohim, who were a very advanced human civilization, agreed to create a new human race on this planet, and supposedly, according to Sverdlov, that took place about 40,000 years ago. The Garden of Eden, that was the Garden of Eden. That was the beginning of what we call now the Adamic race. And we are the product of the Adamic race. There have been, according to, I think it was Sverdlov, it might have been Branton, since we were created, we eventually became Cro-Magnon, Homo erectus, Cro-Magnon, and then Neanderthal. The Federation geneticists, particularly the Elohim, made about 22 different improvements. 22 improvements, or they tweaked the DNA 22 times until finally we have the product that we now call Homo sapiens sapiens. So we are the end product of that creation. And at first, of course, the human population was very, very scattered all over the globe. They were not very many. And slowly but surely, they began to populate the other continents. I think that what the humans were, what the Elohim were thinking about was that eventually they could get this human race they had created to take over the planet through the DNA corrections that they were making. And I think the reason they were confident of that was because the humans on this planet, while we were created physically by the other humans in the galaxy, spiritually we were a totally different race. And the race that we now call the human race is really a physical race created about 40 or 50,000 years ago, combined with the spiritual race, which, according to Alex Collier, he calls our human race the Patal, P-A-T-A-L. And we are a very advanced spiritual race, essentially. And we have the ability to reach into the fifth and sixth dimension and grow spiritually that way. So I think that Federation was of the opinion that this combination would be able to evict the reptilians from this planet and eventually from the solar system. That was the plan. And that's what happened, and that was the Garden of Eden. That's where it all began.
Right. and so take us from there.
Well, the Atlans were not pleased with the end result. They didn't like the fact that the reptilian brain was incorporated into the final product. That really bothered them. They didn't want any reptilian DNA in the final product. But I think the Elohim agreed to that deal for a good reason, because they felt that the reptilian brain makes us somewhat resilient and tough. The reptilian brain, as we know, controls survival and all that aggression that we now call aggression. It's mainly reptilian. So we do have that incorporated into our nature. We are aggressive. We do get involved in wars, but they felt, I think that the Elohim felt that this would be good. This would be good because in the early stages, they needed a race that was tougher, and able to survive. And that has turned out to be the case, because now we have 7 billion people here, That may have not have been the case if they had made us more agreeable and more loving right at the outset. So we have the reptilian brain, but we also have the overlay of the mammalian brain and the rational brain, and they really are what keeping us. They are really what keep us civilized. But also, there's a very other important factor here. According to James Bartley and according to many others, the reptilians do not have what we know as a heart or a loving capability. They just understand domination and conquering other civilizations. The humans are able to love, and love is the key to our basically eventual victory. The reptilians despise that whole idea. Naturally, they don't think of it as a very important factor, but basically that's the key. The fact that we can love is the key to ultimately perhaps winning in this struggle. And we can also reach up into the higher dimensions. If we're allowed to do it, if we're not blanketed and we're not controlled, which we are mind controlled. But if we weren't, we would be able to bring down many more of the fifth and sixth dimensional capabilities. So I think that the council knew what they were doing in creating this specific type of DNA, which incorporates a very highly advanced spiritual race called the Patal, who basically inhabit our physical bodies. And that's been the story for the last 40 or 50,000 years.
Right. Now, we have all of these subplots now, which involve hybridization, infiltration, which involves kind of, you have the Orion Wars, then you have the First and Second World War, you have the Nazification, all of that. Could you bring us through that?
Well, the reptilians, of course, didn't, even though they went underground, they didn't give up. And what they started doing was hybridizing, which they always do. They started kidnapping humans, abducting them, and using the DNA and mixing it with their own and creating a hybrid race. And they were given permission to do that, express permission by Eisenhower in 1954. And that's really when the abductions began in earnest, was right around that time. The so-called Barney and Betty Hill was the first case of that. And creating the hybrids. You know, they typically, John Mack, if you read anything by John Mack, you know how they do it. They kidnap the woman, they abduct the woman, they implant the fetus, which they then allow to stay in the womb for 3 months. Then they take it after 3 months and take it either to an underground facility or to a spaceship. But if they look human enough, they let them stay here because they know they'll be accepted. And that's been the modus operandi for the last 50 years at least, but probably even longer than that. And the abductions are done by their slave race, the Greys. The Greys do the work for them. The Greys do the abductions. The Greys operate the whole DNA arrangement. And according to what I'm now coming to believe, the Greys actually supervise the whole reincarnation process.
I see. And so the reincarnation process is a recent process, or because it seems that
my research on what happened in Egypt with Marduk and so forth, I came to realize that probably the whole reincarnation process is just a way of recycling humans and bringing them back here to work as a slave race, because we are a slave race. Essentially, we are a slave race already. We're completely run by banking, the media, Hollywood, all that is controlled by the Illuminati, who are part reptilian and part human, and they dominate in all those fields. So we are basically being kept here under a blanket, unable to reach out to the higher dimensions, and they keep reincarnating us and bringing us back to continue working for them. That's the conclusions I've come to at this point.
And yeah, well, how are the reptilian bloodlines connected to the Illuminati, for example, in your research?
Well, what we know as the blue bloods, the humans we call blue bloods. The reason the reason for that description is because reptilian blood has more copper in it, and that causes the bloodline of a combined human reptilian to be what they call a blue blood. And so the blue bloods were more connected to the reptilians than they were to the human race, and that's why they've been running the show for so long. All of European royalty was intermarried between other blue bloods so that they could keep it part reptilian, and so that the reptilians could more or less join with the Illuminati in running and dominating the human race. And if you do a little research, you'll find that almost all European royalty were considered blue bloods, and they all intermarried. They married their cousins, they married even their own family, and stayed in power. That's how they stayed in power.
Right. So how consciously how conscious are the hybrids and the Illuminati that they are acting out reptilian control plans, in your judgment?
Well, to start with, I came to realize after studying this carefully that when they create a hybrid body, which consists of DNA from the reptilians and the greys and the human people, that creates a physical body that essentially cannot accommodate a human soul, cannot accommodate somebody that we know as the Patal, spiritual humans. So all hybrids are essentially aliens. In other words, the hybrid body can only accommodate an alien soul, if you want to call it a soul. So essentially, the hybrids are already controlling the human race, even though we don't realize it, even though there may only be perhaps, I think the latest estimate was that perhaps 3% of the human race is hybrid, but I think it's much larger than that, and I think it's growing faster. And even though the hybrids fit into human society, and they can even fit into human workforces and corporations, they still are not human. So they're tied together with the reptilians, and therefore they're going to carry out the reptilian agenda in the final analysis.
And so these type of personalities would tend to gravitate toward uniformed forces, controller organizations. Is that what you're saying, or not necessarily?
Yeah, they can be easily controlled by the Illuminati.
Yeah. Now,
and so they can use them. They can use them in wartime. They can use them in crime. They can use them any way they want.
Right. However, to go back to the documented history, I mean, you have, over 300 pages of documented history here, exopolitical history, and there's another side to the equation, and the other side of the equation is the upper dimensional human forces in the galaxy. So
Right.
aren't they playing a role here? That along with uh, uh, you have upper dimensional forces that aren't, aren't they playing a role with the planet, with planetary ascension, with uh, human soul development, with countering the transhumanist agenda? Have you found evidence of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, the point that I made in the book was that Jesus himself was put here by the Federation.
Uh-huh.
He was not only was he trained by the Federation. First of all, he was chosen by the Federation because of his bloodline. Uh, After Atlantis sank, there were still many, many humans dotting the globe, living all over the globe, who had survived. Now, these humans that survived Atlantis did not have the reptilian brain. They were pre-Adamic. Exactly how they looked, I'm not sure. Maybe some of them did have the enlarged skull, which apparently Corey Good now believes, and David Wilcock now believe that perhaps the pre-Adamic humans did have the enlarged skull. Certainly Akhenaten did have, and so did Nefertiti. But in any case, the humans that existed after the flood, after Atlantis went down, there were many females here who did not have the reptilian brain, and the Federation selected one of those women, who became Mary, and to become the mother of Jesus. And when he was born, they took him to Giza, supposedly, and put him through a long period of indoctrination and training. But he himself, the soul that inhabited the body of Jesus, was also from the Elohim, very advanced already. And so he was ready for the challenge. He was ready for the challenge, and it was a tremendous challenge because he was now had to compete with two religions that were built in. He had the pantheon of the Roman gods on one side. He had the Jewish priesthood on the other side, and here he's plopped down here, and his job is to create a whole new religion, despite that tremendous opposition of both of those religions, and he was able to do it. He was able to do it, and he did his job well. And so that was the first thing that the Federation did to try and regain control of the planet. And as we know, the Christian religion has been very important in keeping us civilized on this planet, and has so far survived for 2,000 years. That was the first thing they did. But of course, the reptilians were involved in creating the Roman religion, and in Rome. And I went into that in great detail, including the role of Constantine in all of this. And so that was the situation for the last 2,000 years.
Right, because there are. It seems that there's a very heavy reptilian association with the Vatican, both in terms of symbology. There's evidence of ritual child sacrifice, blood drinking, cannibalism, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And the reptilians do eat human flesh and they drink human blood. So let's get that on the table here, so we understand that. I think it was Phil Schneider. You know about Phil Schneider, right? Who he was?
Oh yeah, perhaps you can explain that for the audience.
He was involved in building all these what they call dumb bases, deep underground military bases all over the globe. He worked on those in America, and I think he said he was involved in 33 projects, but of course the main one was the Dulce thing in New Mexico. Well, it was he who said that this is his estimate, that approximately 1 million adults and 100,000 children disappear off the face of the earth every year. Now, I tried to make the point with my preface about comparing it with the time machine story, which is very similar. They take them underground, and they use them for food. So that's happening now. That's been happening. Many of the humans who disappear, we have no way of knowing what happened to them, but many of them are being taken down there. And since the reptilians no longer have the dinosaurs to eat, they're eating us. That's the bottom line.
Right. And as I understand it, that essentially we're in a state of where the surface governments have made agreements with the reptilian establishment. Is that correct? Or treaties?
Well, the MILAB, you talk about the MILABs, yeah. The
Yeah.
military-industrial complex, yeah.
Yeah.
What we now call the cabal. The cabal is the
Yeah.
term that we use now.
Perhaps
Is cooperating with the reptilians, yeah.
yeah, the Breata Treaty. Could you explain that? Or
Well, I think the deal was that they convinced Eisenhower that in 1954 that if he would allow them to abduct humans, they would just abduct small numbers of them, and just to be able to study them and to be able to emulate the technology, the genetic technology that we displayed, etc. And in return, they would give us tremendous technology, especially anti-gravity technology, which Eisenhower knew about alien craft. He knew that they did display anti-gravity technology. So that was something that the Air Force people wanted very badly. And that was the deal. And they said that they would report on who they abducted, their names, how long they kept them, and what went on. That was, of course, a promise that they broke immediately. And they started abducting humans in large numbers from all over the globe. Well, from the United States, but also all over the globe, and using them to create the hybrids. That was their main program, was the hybridization of the human race.
right.
And of course, since we have the reptilian brain, and they could operate from the fourth dimension, that made their job a lot easier. They could appear out of nowhere, apparently, and all of a sudden they'd appear before you, because they would just lower their vibrations and appear human. So that allowed them to abduct many humans very, very easily.
And so, how is it that, I mean, if you could explain with more, just kind of fill us in that humanity has allowed itself to be sleepwalked into this circumstance, like, cattle blindsided into the slaughter.
Yeah, and H.G. Wells in the book The Time Machine, he told that very same story. If you recall that story of the time machine, do you remember that? You read that, right?
Oh yeah, but tell our audience.
Well, H.G. Wells was a tremendous prophet. It's almost like he had a crystal ball, because he could tell what was going to happen 30 or 40 years into the future. And in the time machine, he described a paradise, a seeming paradise of humans living in complete leisure, that did not have to work. They were able to live off the planet and just have fun all day long. But every once in a while, they would all become put into a trance, and batch consignments would be taken underground, where they would be enslaved and eaten by the Morlocks. And that was the situation he described in the book The Time Machine. Now, that was kind of a strange story, really, to predict that the human race would is what happened after thousands and thousands of years of human development. That's how we would end up. It just didn't make sense. However, now when we look at the story from the vantage point now of the 21st century, all of a sudden, knowing what we know about the fact that the reptilians eat humans and drink human blood, and according to Phil Schneider, they abduct 1 million adults and 100,000 children every year. That's exactly what seems to be happening. Exactly what H.G. Wells predicted. And it's a sad ending to the human story if that's the way it's going to end. The question is that how it's going to end? But we have some promising developments that may not make it work out that way.
Oh, good.
because the Federation has not abandoned us. They have not abandoned us. And they're here and they're working for us and they're working with us, but they can't do it for us. We have to do it ourselves.
So tell us more.
Well, we know the Pleiadians are channeling through various people, particularly Barbara Marciniak. We're getting a lot of information that way. We're getting a lot of information in the dreamscape when many humans are able to go up into the fifth and sixth dimension while they're sleeping. And the whole name of the game now is expanding our human consciousness so that we can basically achieve our destiny, which is to be a very, very advanced race on this planet, because that's the way we were created from the beginning. And we are more than a match for the reptilians, absolutely more. But as long as they keep us under control, of course, we're not a match. And they have blanketed us on this planet to keep us from achieving space travel and going to Andromeda and going to the Pleiades, because they know that once that happens, it's all over for them. And the key to that is expanding the human consciousness.
Right.
So that's the job. That's really what the Federation is doing now on this planet through various influences, through media and through dreamscape and various other ways, through channeling, is to help us advance our spirituality.
Now, what exactly is what you call dreamscape?
Well, when humans go to sleep and they more or less leave the body, which they do, they're now in the fourth dimension. And we know who controls the fourth dimension, the reptilians. So they're able to program people who are asleep to achieve mind control, because when they wake up in the morning, they will really not know what happened to them or how they may have been hypnotized and mind controlled. But essentially that's what happens, and it happens in the dreamscape, because the reptilians control the dreamscape, which is the lower fourth dimension, or the lower astral. And I think that's exactly how they prepare a nation for war, is they program large numbers of the male population to become more, I would say, perhaps indifferent to human suffering. And but the entities in the fifth dimension and sixth dimension can also program humans through the dreamscape, and that's basically where we are right now. Some of us are responding to that and becoming loving and caring people, and others are becoming murderers and might even say creating what we now know as ethnic cleansing and things like that. That's the game. That's the game we're in now. That's the situation. Once we do, as a race, reach expanded consciousness, the reptilians will no longer have any control over us, and then we will really become then a Star Trek generation, a Star Trek civilization, able to travel freely throughout the galaxy.
Now, you're describing a process that others have put different words on, like density shift or planetary ascension Are these
Ascension,
familiar
yeah, ascension.
words? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because what is ascension really? What is your understanding of of the concept of ascension?
Yeah, it's moving to higher frequencies.
Right. But the reptilians know they have to keep us in lower consciousness in order to stay in control.
Right.
So they distract us. They distract us with the media, with Hollywood, with toys and devices to keep us away from our expanding to what they know will eventually endanger them.
Yeah.
And so keeping us dumb and dumber is a goal.
Right. Now, as you were talking about the development of the reptilians and their relationship to love, light and love being along the higher frequencies, what came up for me also was the sentient inorganic AI artificial intelligence, because it too, it it cannot experience love, and it's in competition with love and with God. And
Right.
it's often been said that the reptilians are in alliance with the sentient AI that is now also vying for control of the planet. And I'm wondering
Exactly.
if you've run across that in the course of your research.
Well, it became clear to me as I did the research about World War I and World War II that both the Kaiser and Hitler were anti-Christian, and that suppression of Christianity has been the goal of those humans who were in alliance with the reptilians, because the Nazis were in alliance with the reptilians from the very beginning. And the Kaiser was a blue blood. We know that because he was part of European royalty for which had been developing for hundreds of years. So keeping us anti-Christian was a way of keeping us from loving, because the main thesis, or the main point of Christianity is love thy neighbor as thyself. This was a whole new concept in religion. No one who had ever been involved in developing a religion or starting a religion had ever talked about love before. So the Federation knew that if they could keep that going and developing that, that would be the key to our victory, because we are able to love. And the reptilians do not have that ability. It's not that they're evil. It's not that they're evil. It's just that they're not built that way. They don't have that capability. They don't have a heart chakra. They don't even know what it is to love. And basically, that's why they are essentially afraid of us, because they know that if we actually develop that capability, their days on this planet are finished. And that's where we are right now. We're at a stalemate at this point. As we start to expand our ability to love and to raise our consciousness, we become a great threat to them, and will eventually, of course, have higher technology that goes with it, and spacefaring technology, and we'll be able to travel freely throughout this galaxy and to other galaxies, and meet our other relatives throughout the galaxy, because they're out there waiting for us.
Right.
So that's the game. That's the name of the game, as far as I'm able to determine. As we expand, as individuals expand their consciousness, and eventually large groups of individuals expand their consciousness, although they don't like us to do that. They try and keep us from getting together. But as that happens, eventually the 100th monkey phenomenon will kick in. And I think you know that story about the 100th monkey, right?
Yes.
How basically what happens is the consciousness starts to expand to other members of the same race, almost magically. And once it starts to spread like that, there's really no stopping it. And eventually, I don't know what that number is, but it's a very large number, of course, of humans who would eventually reach higher consciousness, as that spreads, then the whole globe would become affected by it.
Now, in your opinion and from your studies, what's the best way for this kind of consciousness to spread? Because many times political activity becomes divisive, and other types of activities, things break up rather than being unifying. Going back to the history of the Atlans, etc., over time, what has been like a great successful strategy over Atlans over the, I guess, the eons, you would call it, in this, in this long-term strategy against the reptilians?
Well, for the Atlans, it was easy because they didn't have the reptilian brain. They were humans that, they were humans that came directly from Lyra, essentially through the Pleiades. They didn't have that problem that we have. We were part of the deal they had to make with the reptilians. So we have the reptilian brain, and that's a problem. That's a problem because that makes us aggressive. That makes us sometimes hate-filled, and we have to conquer those. We have to conquer those feelings. But once we do and have it under control, then of course we've reached our goal. We've reached our goal. And now, the answer to how to do that is in the third. It is in the third appendix in my book.
Right.
I don't know. Did you get that far? Did you get that far?
Oh yeah, I did actually. I have gone through this. This is a remarkable book because not only is it a history book and an exopolitics book, but it's a self-help book, and I want to commend you for that.
Well, thanks. I knew it. We had to get a positive. We had to end on a positive note, and I had to end with the encouragement that we can all do this. We can all do this. And that last appendix was written by an extraterrestrial.
Amazing.
And it's out there on the internet. It is amazing that we were able to get that and put it in print because he was from Procyon, and the Greys succeeded in taking over Procyon and eliminating the human race from Procyon so that they all became refugees, and he was one of those refugees. And so he knows what he's talking about. He knows how they do it. He knows how they eventually create more or less their underlings through mind control. It's all about mind control. That's how they control us, essentially. And they perfected a lot of those techniques already. So Kyla, that's his name, is giving us this lesson in how to overcome mind control and how to reach our spiritual potential. And that's why it was important that I wanted to put that in the book and make sure that got in there because that's the key. That's the key to us eventually winning this game.
Could I read a paragraph from that? Would that be okay?
Yeah, please. Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, this is so good. I'm kind of reading from toward the end of it. He says, your own consciousness is the most potent weapon that is available to you at the present time. The most effective way to fight the Greys is to change the level of your consciousness from linear thinking to multidimensional awareness. Your secret weapon, your ace in the hole, is that you are not hive mind collective thinkers, though many of you do fall in that category by conforming to conventional group patterns and are therefore easily controlled by the Greys. Collective thought patterns among humans empower the Greys. It is your individuality which is your best weapon, because it is the one weapon you have that the Greys do not have. The major weakness of the Greys, their area of vulnerability, their Achilles heel, is their inability to think as individuals. They are an extremely telepathic high-tech society, but as individuals they are not creative thinkers. They take orders well, but they do not conceptualize well. Interesting, huh?
Yes, and I made that same point without even knowing any of this. I sort of intuitively, I made that same point in my book about my first book, Secret History of Extraterrestrials, because I pointed out that that's the reason we were able to win World War II. We were able to win World War II because individual GIs and soldiers thought for themselves. They thought individually, whereas the Germans' army, the Wehrmacht, I took the position that they were basically cloned, and they could only think in group consciousness, and so whatever orders were given to them, they carried out without thinking about it. But we didn't do that, and that's the reason we were able to win World War II. And some
Right.
others have, and some other students of World War II have come up with the same idea. And at that point, I didn't know anything about the reptilian problem when I made that point. But now I see how it applies. It applies perfectly.
That is totally amazing. Totally amazing. And you can see how that came down through the reptilians, through the Greys, down into the Wehrmacht, etc. But
Yeah,
then,
exactly. Because
but
yep,
then with equal measure, it's come over through Operation Paperclip. So the U.S. ended up with a problem eventually,
right. Yes, exactly.
and that's
I
why
think
we're
I
here.
made that.
Yeah, exactly. Go on. Sorry.
I think I have one of the images in my book shows a poster that says the Germans did not lose World War II. They came to America, and that's exactly what happened. And that's been a great problem ever since the days of Allen Dulles when he was the head of the CIA, because that allowed a lot of the CIA to become more or less infiltrated by the Nazis, who were controlled in turn by the reptilians and the Illuminati.
Could you sort of give us an overview of kind of the post-World War, post-Operation Paperclip America, North America, from the reptilian infiltration point of view?
Well, it was all basically it was originally called Operation Overcast. A lot of the army men who were involved in repatriating Germans that they felt did not have a Nazi background, they didn't care. They didn't care. And I made the point that there were some very key individuals that allowed thugs, murderers, torturers, the worst of the Nazi empire, you want to call it that, into American industry and the CIA, and that's what happened. And it's taken us a long time to try and get rid of that influence. But the problem was that Allen Dulles, who was the head of the CIA for 10 years, was basically sympathetic to a lot of German and Nazi ideas. I wouldn't say that he himself was a Nazi, but he was open to a lot of their cultural and let's just say social concepts. And so he allowed this to happen because I think he knew what he was doing. He knew that a lot of the people that were becoming repatriated here, working for the large corporations, especially the military-industrial complex, scientists, technology people, and a lot of the people in the CIA were basically ex-Nazis who in turn had been more or less controlled by the reptilians. So that's how it happened. That's how it happened. But I think slowly we've been coming out of that. We've been slowly becoming out of that. And I think Jack Kennedy, of course, became aware of it. And I think that's why he made that statement, that famous statement where he said he was going to break the CIA up into 1,000 pieces. And I think that was his thinking, maybe also of Robert Kennedy.
Right. Exactly. Uh, yes.
But you
And
see, the Federation is helping. Yeah, I'm going. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean, immediately came up the thought that that's why they were eliminated.
Yeah, exactly.
And
The Federation, the Federation's on top of this. They're on top of this. They know what they're doing.
uh, so you are an optimist as far as the spiritual geopolitical uh, future of Earth is concerned.
Not necessarily. Robotology is advancing at such a rapid clip that eventually, I think there was an article in the paper today that roughly 10 different jobs every year are being converted over to robots. And if the robotology continues to the point where artificial intelligence takes over, then of course, no matter what we do spiritually is going to help, because the robots will be running the planet, and that's what the transhumanism agenda is all about. And if that outpaces our development of ascension, then they will take over the planet. That's the situation.
Yeah.
So the question now becomes, how fast can they do it?
Right. What they call the singularity, and of course, it's not only an external robotization, but rather through the nanobots and the internal terraforming of humanity.
I know that's the scary. That's the scary one. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
But as humans it grows spiritually, they can fight that off. They can
Exactly.
They can fight that off.
Well,
we have that ability. We have that ability.
And that is the integral part of the ascension process, which is
right. Exactly.
Which is the density shift from third to fifth density, which the artificial intelligence cannot access. So, there's always that.
That allows us to skip. That allows us to skip over the fourth dimension.
Right. Right. Well, this is you've written a vital work of, I would call, civil defense, cosmic civil defense.
That's a good way to look at it.
Albert. Yeah. And in these times, how can people access this and begin to get more deeply into it?
Well, I think they're going to start out by just reading that third appendix in my book, because he has put it in terms that I could never do, the way he's described it, and he can do that because he was a survivor of the process on his planet. So it's really that final dimension is very important. Appendix is very important, I think.
Right. He's a person who is on a planet where they lost their planet, and so he's warning us now, this is how we can save ours.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And if we can do that, then we will become the Star Trek generation. And that would be our destiny. And that is our destiny. And that should be our destiny, because this planet was given to us. We were created for this planet, to control it, and to help it become the key to the solar system, because it is the most important planet in the solar system. Right. So all of that hinges on this. It all hinges on that. All of it.
Now, how can people access your work and access this book and get more involved and perhaps contact you, etc.?
Well, the book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it's in the bookstores as well. The Barnes & Noble bookstores are, of course, going out of business, so you're not going to be able to find it there anymore. But other bookstores have it, and but Amazon probably your best bet to find it, or through my website. They can come through my website, which is currently under construction. But let me give you that name anyway.
Sure.
It's www.et-secrethistory.net, N-E-T. And eventually, after I'm through with it and have it up to par, I'll have all the information you need to order the book. And in fact, if you want signed copies, I'll be able to give it to you through my website.
Oh, well, thank you. And I I really want to thank you for this work and for taking the time to and the insight. I mean, kind of really saying, hey, this is something that humanity needs to know at this time because we've been here before over the last number of eons, you know, last 25,000 years, say, or 50,000 years.
Right. Exactly.
And we're about to go through it
Exactly.
again. And by the way, here's what some other ETs are telling us happened on their planet. And so this is very, very valuable work uh, that you've done. And so we all want to thank you. And we hope that in the future, um, perhaps around your other works, we mentioned the Serpo book, and perhaps as events develop, you can come back and visit us in the future. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd be glad. I'd be glad to do that, Albert. And also, I'm going to start incorporating as much of this material as I can in my website eventually. But right now, it's not ready for that yet. But
Okay.
eventually, I'll have references in the website to other readings.
Oh, excellent.
But thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Certainly. Okay. Well, we've been with author and researcher Len Kasten, who is author of the new book Alien World Order, presenting a vital perspective on the reptilian and gray dynamic with us humans here on Earth for a long time, not only in this solar system, not only in the galaxy, but also on our home planet here. Thank you very much. This is Alfred Lemmermont Weber at Exopolitics TV. Thank you.